On This Week in Enterprise Tech, Icann has autonomy, Microsoft can't get you the Surface, and Facebook thinks about IKEA data centers. Plus, HIPPA, HIPPA, HIPPA. Twice on the set.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for This Week in Enterprise Tech is provided by Cashfly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Twit. This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 83, recorded March 17th, 2014. Big Data at Enterprise Connect 2014. This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by Prosper. Prosper is a peer-to-peer lending marketplace which connects people who are looking to borrow money with those who have money to lend. Visit prosper.com/twit and receive a $50 Amazon.com gift card when you get a loan. Welcome to Twit, This Week in Enterprise Tech. It's a show dedicated to the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and the geek who just wants to know how the world is connected. I'm your host, Father Robert Balacer, coming to you live from the show floor of Enterprise Connect 2014 in Orlando, Florida. But of course, I'm not by myself. I'm always joined by geeks aplenty, including my very good friend, Mr. Brian Chi, the geek in paradise from Honolulu, Hawaii, the director of the Advanced Network Computing Laboratory. Brian, I understand you just finished up a mini maker.
Yes, we did. Our final count, I believe, was 723 attendees and 30 makers. And we have already been invited back by Iolani School for next year.
Fantastic. Always good to hear. We like the spirit of the maker because they grow up to be the next generation of IT people. Also joining me, actually in person, so kind of in studio, but not maybe remote studio, is my other good friend, Mr. Curtis Franklin from Enterprise Efficiency. Curtis, thank you for coming to, your home here in Orlando.
Padre, it's good to be here with you here on the floor at Enterprise Connect. It's nice to be out of the rain here in sunny Florida. It's a rainy day out there, but always sunny in the studio with you.
How about that? I am a sunny man. Now let's get right to it. We've got an action-packed episode here. But let's start off with some enterprise bites. Hey, Cheebert, did you hear this thing about Icann taking over the internet? Specifically, the U.S. government letting the contract to have them somewhat moderate the internet expiring and the U.S. government letting them take it over entirely.
Yeah, didn't we have a conversation about this just last week? Maybe.
Just last week, in fact, we had Carl Auerbach, who was talking a little bit about what Icann does. Now, this story just came out last week, and it's about the United States government not really doing anything big. They're essentially following up on a promise that they made back in 2006. Now, Icann stands for the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. It's a California-based nonprofit that is responsible for overseeing identifiers on the internet. That means top-level domains, it means IPv4, IPv6, handing out those blocks to the different registrars so that they can make sure that servers get the addressing space and the identifying space that they need to make the internet work. Well, back in 2006, Icann signed an agreement with the United States Department of Commerce that would move it towards autonomy, full autonomy, allowing them to manage those assets through what they call the multi-stake model, multi-stakeholder model. Now, that move is now complete. Chiba, let me ask you, from an IT geek's perspective, does this really change anything? I mean, if you're just a standard IT administrator and you're worried about your domain, you're worried about your IPv6 addresses, this isn't going to do anything that you have to worry about, right?
Well, the change is going to be very subtle because a lot of the changes are going to be if we have a multi-stakeholder environment, it's not going to have the regulatory flavor that we had previously. So immediately, no, you're probably not going to see a thing change. Over time, maybe, because now we're going to start seeing a lot more market pressures shaping how Icann runs. And we'll see. It's one of those wait and see things.
Curtis, I want to throw this over to you. Back in 2013, Icann was part of the multi-signator Montevideo Agreement, where basically in response to the NSA spying, they agreed to create a proposal that solved for four things, specifically four things. One, warning against internet fragmentation because of trust issues. In other words, countries breaking off their own internet because they can't trust the global internet anymore. Two, that there needed to be an ongoing effort to care for the internet. Three, that equal footing needed to be allowed for all stakeholders in the internet. And four, that there was a continued push to transition for IPv6. This seems to be just that, right? I mean, this is a really good move towards that. If the United States government is saying, well, we no longer have any sort of authority over the handing out of address blocks or TLDs, that falls right in with the Montevideo statement, yes?
It does indeed. Now, I'm going to agree with Chibert about something. The concerns that I have, and I think the concerns that an enterprise might have, isn't about what this means in the short term. I think probably over the next, we'll call it 12 to 24 months, there will be no significant change. No change that most enterprises, most individuals would notice at all. The place that this gets interesting is when we start getting into what's included in the all stakeholders and the ongoing efforts to develop global care of the internet. Because thus far, the internet has been developed by and large based on US or North American and Western Europe standards of open information flow and care for everyone there. But those values, while they aren't uniquely North American, aren't universal either. And so there is some concern that down the road, there could be much more serious attempts to go in and take away some of the free flow, to say, you know, we need more control over what transits the internet, not just the devices that connect to the internet. That's where the concerns are, and that's where I think a lot of people are taking a wait-and-see attitude before they declare this a good or bad thing.
Yeah. Chibert, I want to throw this over to you because there is a point to be made that I think a lot of people are, well, a little upset. Not necessarily because this is a bad move, but it seems as if we should be saying, look, we created the internet. The United States created the internet. It follows that it's ours, right? I mean, again, I'm playing devil's advocate here. This is not actually a stance I believe in. But there are going to be those who say, why should we turn things over to a world which we don't necessarily trust? We don't think they know how to run the internet. We don't think they know how to manage it. Why should they be in charge?
So this is a similar argument to why everybody should speak English. I'm sorry, you know, even though I love living in America, I think it's one of the best places in the world to live and all that. In the amount of travel that I've done, especially internationally, there's an awful lot of smart people out in the world, and it is in our best interest to be able to seek out those great ideas. So having the non-American, non-North American entities participate in the governance of the internet makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. In a lot of ways, the Europeans have a lot more freedom of speech in their internet than America does. You know, they don't have a spy agency, at least blatantly tapping their lines. So I like the attitude of let's all work together, and maybe, just maybe, if we learn how to work together on the internet, maybe we can have world peace.
Let me throw this over to you, Curtis. And again, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Okay. Someone comes up to me and says, wait a minute. No. North Korea shouldn't have a say in how the internet works. Iran shouldn't have a say in the internet works. These countries that want to censor information that everyone else thinks should be accessible by everyone on the internet, these countries shouldn't have a say in how it works. What would you say to that? I mean, Chibert makes a great statement in saying, look, this is how innovation flows. The multinational cooperation is how we're going to find the next thing that makes the internet better. But what about those who are still saying, no, we should decide who has a say in how the future internet gets formed?
Well, I think that Chibert's entirely correct in that we have the potential for a much richer set of ideas and concepts governing the internet. That's a good thing. But as you point out, we also have the possibility that some of those ideas and concepts will be diametrically opposed to the kinds of freedoms and general free flow of information that we have come to associate with the internet. So I think what we do have to figure out is how we're going to watch this develop. You know, I have an adult child, and there's an element of this that's like that. At a certain point, your child leaves home and becomes their own human being, their own person. It's time, I think, for the internet to get beyond a national definition. This is that step, but you have to be aware that they may not go exactly where you would have them go. You got to be okay with that, even when it's painful, and it may indeed be painful a few years down the road.
All right, guys, I think that's it. Let's move on. I'm sure this is not the last we're going to hear about this story. There are going to be people on both sides who are going to decry every time something happens with the governing board of the internet that we don't agree with. But for now, let's move on to the next enterprise bite, and that is, hey, there's some good news here. Microsoft actually has demand for the Surface. Believe it or not, Surface RT and Surface Pro. But of course, there's bad news that comes with that, and that is they still haven't figured out how to do the supply channel. That's right. Microsoft resellers have been complaining that they have moderate demand for the Surface and the Surface Pro, but they can't get their hands on them. Now, there are 9 business-to-business channel partners and 2 distributors right now have signed up to sell the Surface as of August 2013. But they're complaining that they can't get any stock. At least they can't get it in a timely fashion. It's taking them way too long. And in this world, in this kind of a business, this kind of a market, if you can't have the product the next week, you can't sell the product. Now, some of the partners have been complaining that this is because Microsoft is treating hardware sales like they used to treat software licensing. And they haven't figured out that, no, it's an entirely different game. You need to get hardware channel experts, much like Apple did. They hired the best of the best in the hardware channel, and that accounted for so much of their success. But now Microsoft they're just sort of treating it like, well, you'll get it when you get it. Cheever, let me throw this over to you first. A, is this what we expect from Microsoft? I mean, I thought Microsoft had sort of tried to rejigger itself as a products and services company. And B, how do you fix this?
Okay. First and foremost, Microsoft is a software company. Repeat after me. Microsoft is a software company. They've never really been good at hardware. They always develop it and then turn it over to someone. So I have this amazing video conference phone from them. It looks like an upside down Starship Enterprise. It is an amazing phone designed to be around. They've also done mice. They've done keyboards. But they are not a hardware company. So they don't really have the experience in channel marketing and in channel distribution. My personal opinion is they should stop trying to learn how, just turn it over to the people that actually know how. People like Tech Data, Ingram Micro D, people like that have a lot of experience moving boxes.
Okay, I get it. So Microsoft is a software company, and they should turn over hardware to their partners. But Curtis, they're trying to reinvent themselves. I mean, they want to essentially bring the Xbox success across the company. And if that's the case, they're more than a software company now, right?
Well, yes and no. Even the Xbox, I think you can make the argument that it is a vehicle for moving software and content. The tablet is a hard thing. We've seen this over and over and over. You know, Apple did the iPad, was such a success that we saw a bunch of people jump into that market very quickly, and practically none of them succeeded. Why? Because tablets are tough to get right. Microsoft, it looks like, has done the right thing with the design, if the demand numbers are to be believed, but they still are having trouble with the manufacturing. It's complicated, takes a while, and they don't have experience with that kind of manufacturing. The displays alone are a serious problem. They've missed it, and it's going to be interesting to see just how badly it bites them, and also whether they end up overcorrecting and we end up with a Christmas fire sale on Surface devices of different sorts.
That is sort of the ultimate nightmare for Microsoft, right? That they get too many services again. Now, Cheever, let me ask you about that. Yes, I agree, they are a software company, but I also think that they're trying to reinvent themselves. And I also think if they want this product and services things to work, they are going to have to learn how the hardware channel works at some point. Whether it means bringing some partners in or doing acq hires, they're going to have to break this nut.
Yes, and actually, I have had one idea. Personally, I think their whole rollout using the Microsoft Store was great, but I don't think they went far enough. I used to work at a regional distributor, and regional distribution was great because it also provided a tech support channel and a training channel in addition to a distribution channel. Maybe, just maybe, Microsoft needs to use their Microsoft stores as regional distribution centers for their products, and that might be a way to get into the hardware game.
Not bad at all. Well, folks, let's move on to the last of the Enterprise Bites. This is something I wanted to talk about last week. We ran out of time, and that was Facebook builds modular data centers. Now, their new design, they say, is inspired by IKEA. That's right. They want to create these data centers, basically prefabs, that have all the wiring, all the cooling, all the piping, all the servers built into modules that can be broken down, put onto the back of a 40-foot trailer, and then brought to site and assembled and basically brought up in no time at all. Now, this differs from what Google and Microsoft have been doing with their containerized data centers, in that they don't want to have a warehouse full of containers with servers in them. They actually want to build structures that have more efficiency, because they want these to be permanent. Now, Shepard, let me throw this over to you first. This is not a tremendously new idea. This is basically just prefab taken to another level. But is this something that you think other companies, say Apple or Microsoft, Google, or anyone who wants a big data presence is going to have to start looking for? In other words, are we getting past the era of the data center on a truck?
Well, so data centers, all they are is power, cooling, and space. There's no reason why it has to be permanent, no reason why it has to be in a truck. I was actually watching a special. I got my Blu-ray copy of Escape Plan with Arnold and so forth on it. And part of the documentary behind it is prison cells are actually made modular. It's made in one piece and stacked together. Why can't we do that for data centers? Data centers don't have to have these massive open floors anymore. If you modularize your data center, it means you can grow your data center as your needs grow. And that also means that you can move them around, you can shuffle things around. And if you have a common utility wall, it should make it easier to plug in. I think we're going in the right direction. I proposed using 40-foot containers in an old parking area at the University of Hawaii. I wish they had done it. It puts it closer to electricity. It puts it closer to places where I can have air conditioning. Modularity has proven economical for a lot of industries, and I don't see why it won't work for the IT world.
Well, Curtis, what about you? If I was going to go to my CTO, or even better, my CIO, or even better, the CFO, and say, look, I've got two choices. We need to do a build out in X country. I can either ship a bunch of containerized data centers, have it up and running in a week, have the capacity that we need, and then look at something more permanent. Or I could say, I could ship a prefab data center and have it up in a month, and it will be a little bit more efficient over time. Which do you think is the one that you would approach your CFO with?
I think I would probably go with the second, the idea of going with something longer term. I mean, containerized data centers have their place in emergencies for capacity. They are in a very, very real sense a cloud iteration on the hardware. But the containerized systems, the modular systems, the prefab systems, have a lot going for them. I think that we're going to see many more companies do this. And my big question is whether Facebook is calling them something like Splurm, and they all come with just a big fold-out sheet of pictograms rather than anything with words on how to set them up.
Okay, so there you have it, the future of data centers, according to Curtis Franklin. Now, when we come back, we're going to speak with, Eric Kaff, who's here at Enterprise Connect. He's showing us exactly what's going to be happening to the future of unified communications. But before that, I want to throw over to the studio to talk about one of the supporters of the Twight Riot. Hey, thanks, Conrad. I thought this would be a good time to bring up the first sponsor of the Twight Riot, and that's Prosper. Now, what if I told you that in 72 hours you could have $35,000 to cover all your needs? What would you do with it? Would you pay off your high-rate credit card debt, start a business, finally do that home improvement project that you've been putting off year after year? Well, what if I told you that by filling out an easy online application and providing a few details, you could see a rate online
instantly, without ever stepping foot in a bank. Well, that's not a fantasy, that's Prosper. Prosper is an innovative peer-to-peer lending process, Silicon Valley's answer to a more modern, community-based personal loan. There are no outrageous fees, no raising interest rates, and yes, you'll never set foot in a bank. I remember back in the day when my computer consulting company started expanding past the point at which my resources could support it. I needed cash, which meant that I needed a loan from a bank. And that process was as demeaning as it was confusing, showing one bank manager after another that my business wasn't just cash positive, but profit flush, with just a need for enough cash to fulfill my existing contracts. I wish Prosper had existed back then. Then I could have saved myself the wear and tear of the bank shuffle and gotten the cash that I needed immediately. Prosper offers low fixed rates, unsecured personal loans, which means no collateral required, and has multiple year terms available. Prosper has more than 2 million members, lenders and borrowers alike, and over 900 million in funded loans. Folks, this is a revolution in financing, something that you've only heard about as a trial program overseas or as a series of microloans. Prosper is connecting people who need money with those who have it to loan. It's really that simple. Just go to prosper.com/twit and check your rate instantly without affecting your credit score. Here's what we would like you to do. For a limited time, Prosper is offering Twit viewers a $50 Amazon.com gift card when you get a loan from Prosper. Go to prosper.com/twit, and that's a special site just for our viewers. Up to $35,000 in just 3 days, and receive a $50 Amazon.com gift card when you get a loan. Prosper.com is not affiliated with Amazon. For the gift card details, visit prosper.com/twit. And we thank Prosper for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Now that we've heard that exciting development in financing, back to you, Padre.
Thanks, Padre. I think we just broke the space-time continuum. I'm joined here by Eric Kraft, who is the co-chairman of Enterprise Connect. Eric, thank you very much for coming on to talk to us.
Thanks very much for having me, Padre.
Now,
great to.
This is the third year that we've been here at Enterprise Connect for with Twyett, and I got to say it's a lot of fun. I mean, this is one of those shows that I enjoy every year because Unified Communications isn't what it used to be.
It's definitely not. This show is people are amazed that this show is 24 years old. It goes back to a time when it was a PBX show, and it was a very much smaller and different event. And really, in the old days, the PBX just was a standalone thing. It was a silo, and now there's really not much in IT that communications doesn't touch or isn't touched by communications, and that's reflected here on the floor.
Now, let me ask you about that, because there are people who have been in the industry for a long time, myself included, who looks at the history of shows, and you have your interops, and you have your Comdexes, and you have even CES, which brings a lot of the consumer level into IT communications. And they're going to look at a show like Enterprise Connect, and they're going to say, well, why do I have to go to another show? Can't I get everything I get from Enterprise Connect at an interop? Or can't I go to CES and see the stuff that I'm interested in? What does Enterprise Connect specifically handle?
Well, first of all, I mean, I love Interop, and I also I chair the collaboration track at Interop, and it's really the overlap has grown over the years. But what you really get at Enterprise Connect is people whose job it is to really make real-time communications work, and that's still a challenge that's fairly unique in the IT world in terms of at the network level being able to provision an IP network that can support voice and video and some relatively near real-time data, text traffic, and integrating communications into specific business applications or business processes. That's something that really enterprises are just starting to learn about, and there's really this is an event that really is devoted exclusively to those issues and those challenges.
All right. Now, Eric, let's skip past any of the PR stuff. Let's skip past any of the buzzwords, and let's give people a dime store tour of what was released here at Enterprise Connect. What are the new announcements for 2014? What are the trends that you've been seeing?
Well, I think the trends that we're seeing really have to do with trying to move communications into truly being an application on the network or tied to applications. The trends deal with APIs up and down the stack. One of the most interesting things that wasn't announced at this event, but it's a kind of an ongoing thing, is the idea of using tying SDN controllers to communication servers. Microsoft is doing that with Link and HP's SDN controllers. So the idea of tying communications so that it can control the network. The idea of tying communications into business applications like Microsoft does with Link and hooking into the Office suite. And so what we've seen as far as announcements or new products have focused. Siemens, again, they've been kind of slow rolling out this Ansible product, but they announced some significant steps towards getting that GA, and that deals with trying to integrate almost anything you can think of, social and analytics and document management and mobility into a client or an interface for communications. That's from Unify.
Now, Eric, we know that most of these UC standards are built on solutions that are readily available, cross-platform, cross-vendor. But I'm wondering, what would it take to get a real UC Federation standard? You know, something that every vendor signs up for, everyone's going to support, and so that every device can talk to every other device. Do you see that in the future, or is that's just not going to happen because companies want to differentiate themselves?
Well, forgive me, the phrase that came to mind was act of God, but
okay.
But honestly, and we saw it today in the opening session that we had. My colleague Fred Knight, our general manager, really challenged the people on stage, and they were the sort of core UC vendors, the Cisco's, Microsoft's, Avaya's, and said, you know, when are you guys going to have your stuff work together? And you know, I guess to their credit, they didn't even really try too hard to, you know, even make the kind of, a couple of them I think even said essentially, you know, we're always going to be competitors and we're always going to be trying to add value in our own way. The problem is in communications, I mean, like in the early days of interop, that's, you know, for communications to have value, it's, you know, you want it to be interoperable, and that's one of the reasons that WebRTC, the new standard for multimedia enabling browsers, is so exciting, because of the potential that you have web standards and web universality that you could bring to communications interfaces.
Right, got it. There is one big thing that I'd actually like to discuss with you, and that is the trend of big data integrated into some UC suites. We've seen this in products from IBM, we've seen this in Microsoft, from NEC, from Siemens, where they no longer just offer you a communication suite. It's no longer just RTC. They have to include some sort of analytics, something that takes disparate sources of information and gives the retailer or gives the business running an RTC system some sort of real world advantage. Is this just something that's going to be, we'll see it in a couple of years because big data is a big thing right now, or do you think this is going to become a standard tool in every RTC suite?
Well, you know, I don't know if it'll be a standard tool. I think the way I think about it is, you know, for those of us who go back long enough and are kind of telecom geeky, it kind of a lot of it goes back to the contact center. The most cutting edge technology in communications or telecom has always sort of made it in the contact center because that's where you had a provable ROI. And so the old computer telephony integration was successful in the contact center, not so much elsewhere. And that's where I think we'll see the early success of these new big data and analytics products is in the contact center, because you can prove it. But there's a lot of potential that that people talk about for other things. I think about, you know, kind of the speech analytics, so, you know, applications that can sort of crunch all the data in communications you've had with customers, and, you know, this customer seems to respond to this phrasing, and that can sort of prompt your salespeople. You know, it seems like a great idea, but sometimes it's kind of the technology for something other than the contact center. It takes a while to kind of work its way in.
Right. Yeah. And I think we're going to start seeing that from a couple of companies. Like we were talking last week about IBM. IBM has made a number of acquisitions in 2013, specifically looking to leverage web services and big data analytics. IBM is a vendor here. We're also seeing it from Microsoft. Microsoft saying, look, the information that you could get off of Link can help you guide decisions you make within your company. It seems to me as if that's not the last we're going to see of big data solutions.
Absolutely not. And, you know, IBM obviously has been such a leader in that. But the guy who's actually going to be keynoting for us on Wednesday from Microsoft, Gurdeep Singh Paul, ran their Link operation for several years, went away for a couple of years, and actually worked on the Bing projects and on artificial intelligence with Microsoft. And he's talked a lot since coming back to Link about bringing that, essentially searchability and proactive analytics to the interacting with communications. And I think you're absolutely right. We're going to see a lot of that.
Let's go a little bit deeper. Same topic, big data analytics, but something that's been on everyone's mind since the last time I did Enterprise Connect, and that is privacy. Okay, when we're talking about UC, when we're talking about unified communications, we always look at it in terms of the positive, that we are allowing our networks to power voice and data simultaneously, that we can draw data points, analytics from those systems. But there's that other side, which is it makes it a lot easier for a bad actor to take advantage of that data in one central space. Do you see any vendors addressing that, or is this just the price of doing business?
To be honest, I don't see any vendors addressing it. At least in our space, you don't. I see it. I hear it talked about a lot, and I hear people, saying it's a concern. But I don't see it addressed, and I think that it's the kind of thing where we talk about it, and just there's layer after layer of it. I was on a webinar dealing with adding video to business processes, and we got onto the subject of Amazon Mayday and why did that work, or why is that a good idea? And the idea of one-way video, once you start accepting video feeds of your customers in their homes, what privacy issues are there? What issues, if there's something in the background that is not appropriate, or if is revealing something about the person that they didn't mean to reveal, what liability? There's a lot of privacy, and employee privacy in the U.S. the laws are probably a little more lax, but in Europe, employees have a lot of protection that if you use some of these systems to the ability that they're getting to be, it seems like there could be some more legal issues.
Eric, I want to give you one last question. It's the question that we typically give all of our guests, and that is, in a mythical 10,000-seat environment, you've got an IT director who has experience, but maybe not a lot of real-world savvy in deploying a UC system. To come to a show like this, what would you say should be the things he should be looking for?
Well, I think that if that's that mythical 10,000-seat system, maybe it may be mythical, but it's probably got an installed base, and so what we try to offer and provide for that type of an attendee is something that's got a mix of, how do I deal with end of life on my legacy gear, and how do I integrate that with the newer stuff that's coming in, how do I protect investment and look to don't buy something that's aging technology. We see, the idea of an IP PBX. We've had multiple customers on case study panels here saying, I really don't intend to buy another IP PBX. I've got to come up with something that really looks to the future. So I think that person, a mixture of learning the old technology, and we did a day on WebRTC. Colin Jennings, who's one of the leaders in the standards body, advised people. He said, this is a technology that every organization should have somebody playing with. And I think I would encourage the person who's coming here to go to a session or two that involves stuff you might play with as opposed to stuff you're gonna build.
Eric, thank you very much for talking to us. Thank you. That's Eric Kraft, who is the co-chairman of Enterprise Connect here in Orlando in 2014.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for the show. And you know what? I'm going to check out the booths right after this.
Awesome.
There's some interesting tech out there.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot.
Now, let's have a little gander at our next guest. Scott McMillan is an expert in HIPAA. No, that's not some sort of weird animal that lives in the water. That's the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996. Scott McMillan in the studio. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Father.
Now,
and
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I wouldn't go as far as to say that I'm an expert, but I would say I have some expertise in the area in which it applies to IT. Because as if you just look at the name with Healthcare Insurance and Accountability Act, Portability and Accountability Act, the portability has to do mostly with the ability to have insurance if you lose your job or change job. And then the accountability is really where you get into the issues of privacy and security, and especially around dealing with healthcare information in the electronic world.
Right. Now, Cheever told me a while back that he was looking for a deep throat in the HIPAA world, just because there aren't a lot of IT people, tech people, who are willing to talk about being HIPAA compliant. Could you explain really quickly, what does it mean to be HIPAA compliant? What are the things that IT people need to do most often to make sure that their organizations meet those standards?
That's actually a relatively easy question, and I don't know why people wouldn't want to say if they were HIPAA compliant. Being HIPAA compliant means that you are taking reasonable measures to ensure that your data remains secure. That is, you don't have outside people looking at it. That only the people who are the intended people, the healthcare providers, are looking at information, and you don't have people who maybe not be providing patient care browsing it. That would be the first part. And then the second is that you're keeping it secure, that there's nothing that's going to, hopefully that's nothing going to happen to it. And it's making reasonable decisions. For example, making sure that your network is secure. If you're going to have a wireless network, keeping your wireless network secured so that people aren't just connecting in and going and looking around.
Nope, can't hear you anymore.
Unfortunately,
here we'll do a pickup at the end. Hold on. I'm talking over you, so I can't hear you at all. I'm going to shut up now, and you can just pick up with your next question.
Scott, let me ask you this. If someone were to come up to you and say, okay, what is HIPAA? How did it come about? Why do we have it? Why do we have to worry about it? What would you say?
Really, it came about for two reasons. First of all, prior to 1996, if you changed job or lost your job, you didn't always have insurance afterwards. And that was a major concern for people. If for some reason your company laid you off or something happened, there was nowhere for you to go, and you didn't have insurance. And that can be, as we're seeing now with all of the issues that are going on in healthcare, that's a very devastating situation for people to be in. Also, when prior to 1996, if you changed jobs, there could have been issues with pre-existing conditions, and we know that that's another issue. So perhaps if you were insured at one other location and moved to a new company, that there might be a situation where you weren't covered. So that was the first part of it. The second part of it was establishing some standards. Not to belittle the government in any way, shape, or form, but they sort of caught on that things were going electronic, and we were doing more and more things electronically, and medical records were becoming an electronic event. It was, although it really started with the finance side. As time was going on, they started doing records online, and this information was out there. And we were starting to really embrace that technology, which I am very glad for. It's kept me employed for a number of years now. But we were transmitting data to insurance companies. And early on, there weren't necessarily a lot of ways of doing that. So data was being transmitted and errors were being made, and they realized that there was going to have to be some security around that. They were going to have to build some measures to allay people's fears that perhaps when that data was being transmitted, that anyone could reach it and anyone could get it, and suddenly you could have some situation where the newspaper is printing or something else. These are all the people in town with heart disease or worse. So that was really what they started doing, and they started looking at that as a major issue to move it forward.
Okay. Now, Cheebert, I understand that you have a long relationship with HIPAA. Might you have some insight into what it means beyond just healthcare?
Actually, one of the things that I actually wanted to toss to Scott is it sounds like the portability in the name HIPAA might have actually spawned a whole bunch of new standards. Is there a bunch of industry standards for data exchange now? And also, gee, some of the descriptions that you just made are starting to sound like maybe Obamacare is trying to continue what HIPAA started. Is that any truth to that?
Let's see. Moving through, yes, there are standards that are continuing to evolve through all of this. And there are standards for exchange there, and this is just as we've developed the technology and as things have moved forward, they start realizing that there are better ways to do things. There was a time which both you and I date back to, whether you want to admit it or not, that we got online with modems, and times change. So yes, there are additional standards, and they're coming up with different ways to exchange information and to secure information. As for the first title of HIPAA regarding the portability, yes, in some ways it is. It's we're seeing some improvements on it with pre-existing conditions, and getting exchanges out there where people can get insurance on their own that they might not have been able to get because of pre-existing conditions. And I know there's been a lot of talk in the press that people are getting opportunities now to perhaps leave a company and go out on their own and start on their own, and hopefully those companies are then replacing those people and getting more people employed.
All right. Now let me ask this, because we've been talking about specifically about moving from one healthcare policy to another, from one insurance to another, but there is more of an IT aspect to this, and that is, how do your networks stay HIPAA compliant? When you have to protect patient data, what does it mean for your network to be HIPAA compliant? If you've created a network that has on it confidential files about patients' health or information that could lead people to make conclusions about patients' health, how do you make sure that you do not run afoul of the HIPAA regulations?
Well, first of all, that information should be held in a program that you have security for. For example, all of the major electronic medical record systems, you have authentication that you have to go in with. And your access within those systems is linked to your level of security. Or your level. So, for example, a nurse may not have the same abilities as a doctor, and that often comes around the ability to prescribe information. So those are the first things. You need to have that security, so you don't have just anyone going in and getting the information. Secondly, you have to make sure that your data is stored in a secure location. Obviously, you're going to want to have a data center. You're going to want to have that secured, and so that you can't have nefarious activity. In addition, depending on what level of security you feel you need, it can go on from there. You can go into thin clients where there's no hard drive. You can disable USB ports. You can disallow users from being able to create a report that's an Excel file, for example, that they could store locally. In most cases, this is I think that many people feel that when there's a major loss of data, when there's been the HIPAA violations, it's more come from a sense the aspect of someone's had a lot of data on a laptop computer that's included PHI. health information that could be tracked back to the patient from perhaps a research study or something of that sort, and the computer gets stolen. So there's the necessity to try to prevent that from happening. Unfortunately, as we know, computers can get stolen, especially nowadays that laptops only weigh a couple of pounds. You can drop it into a purse or a backpack, and away you go. So keeping those locked down. Those are some of the important things that you need to do. And one thing that maybe I'm oversimplifying here. You have to also take into account that you have to take reasonable measures. You can't lock everything down. You can't super glue every computer to every source. That you have to take a wall out to get the computer. You take what reasonable measures you can, and to try to prevent it from happening. And also, I would go out on a limb to say that most of the time that I think that laptop computers are stolen, they're not stolen for the PHI that's on them, but they're generally just stolen because it's a laptop computer and someone can get some quick money off of it. But those would be the major things, is just making sure that you keep your network secure, you keep your devices secure, and most importantly, you try and keep your data secure, and you keep anyone from accessing it. And that can be as simple as making sure that all your users log in as themselves, and as soon as they leave the computer, that they either log out or you have the computer log out for them. There are proximity devices that you can use that will do the same thing, so that people don't have to log themselves in, which is often a complaint.
Scott, let me ask this. All of those scenarios dealt with information getting lost on, say, a laptop, or not having it locked down in the proper program. It either assumes that there was some sort of malfeasance in locking up a device, or that someone was actually looking to specifically find patient health information. But there's something else that we deal with. Specifically, we deal with here. We just talked about it just a second ago, and that is in big data analytics. What we're seeing more and more is that health information makes for great big data. Even if we anonymize it, we're finding that there's issues with being HIPAA compliant, and at the same time providing our databases, our big data databases, with enough information to make good analytics. So let me give you an example here. We have an article from the Stanford Law Review that talked about how big data may need a rethinking of HIPAA. Specifically, the article identified many benefits that could be taken from big data. They pointed to the adverse effects of a drug, Vioxx, which was made possible only because the data connected by Kaiser Permanente was made available to big data analytics. They also looked at Google flu trends, which uses anonymized data in order to predict outbreaks, specifically looking for searches that might indicate a person has some of the symptoms that are a precursor to a flu. Now, in those cases, the Stanford Law Review was saying, look, clearly the big data was a good thing, and clearly the data was anonymized, so they could say that they're meeting HIPAA standards because they're not revealing any personally identifiable information about the patients. The problem is, we've seen in the past, starting with the AOL big data dump almost 10 years ago, that it's possible to re-identify data, anonymized data, with the people it belongs to. If that's the case, then essentially big data that has anything to do with any patient health information whatsoever doesn't meet the HIPAA standards. So I guess my question to you is, how would we deal with something like that? Is HIPAA ready to address the anonymization of PHI?
There are actually a couple different things that have been done, and in answer to your question, yes, they are. They are looking to be able to scramble data. There's two ways that they look at it. That they can either have a statistician, a trained statistician, analyze the data and remove the factors that would allow you to re-identify the patient. And generally so that's the first one. Then they also have their what they call their 18 factors of safe haven. And the 18 factors of safe haven obviously remove patient name and date of birth and zip code, and sometimes it's just the last two dates of the zip code. So there's 18 different items that they look to have you remove, and by doing so, what they have been able to determine through their own analysis that you can reduce the percentage, and they give you there's some data out there. If you go to if you just want to Google HIPAA and you go to the Health and Human Services website, they give you some examples there of where you could, what percent that you can come back with. Perhaps if you have had the birth date information and zip code information, they actually say that there's actually a good chance that you could actually find those people. But if you only have, 3 digits of the zip code and none of the birth date, then you're not going to be able to get back. So they are actually looking at that, and they're removing enough information, at least in their minds, to make it safe. But and it's going to be it's going to be an issue as technology moves forward. There'll be more and more opportunity to put this together, but they're making strides and have made some strides to make that available, because there is the knowledge that the research is very, very important, and it's giving us great ways to improve the general public health.
Okay, Curtis, I want to throw this over to you. When we talk about big data in the enterprise, one of the data points that they would love to have is PHI, right? I mean, personal health information is one of those, even if it's anonymized, is one of those things that truly lets you tailor your marketing efforts, your product development efforts, go down the spectrum. This is the kind of information that enterprises would love to get their hands on, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you know about someone's health, then you know about their concerns. I mean, you know if they're concerned about weight, if they're concerned about helping items, if they've shown some interest, if you've got a group that is interested in, for example, arthritis, then that implies things about their age. It implies things about the kind of physical helpers that they need, the kind of stuff that they're going to want for their house. So absolutely, this is a treasure trove. But that treasure trove is also why people are very concerned about this information getting out there with any sort of personally identifiable stuff. People are really reticent about being marketed to that precisely without their very specific permission. And so this is really the heart of the complex, the complex conflict that we're in. How much useful information is out there? How much privacy? HIPAA is trying to really straddle that line, and they do it in various interesting ways.
All right, Cheever, let me throw this over to you. This is one of those interesting issues. What Scott was talking about, the two manners of which you strip away the personal identifying information. The first one sounded incredibly labor intensive, and the second one, I wasn't really sure if that's possible in an enterprise setting. Let me ask you, on your campus, especially with the programs that you deal with, have you had to worry about any HIPAA compliance?
I have. Actually, I worked on a couple of projects. One I thought was awesome, but unfortunately never got funded, where they were going to track a series of 2,000 children from birth to their 21st birthday. So it's an awful long project. But obviously, when you're storing that much data over that long a period, sanitizing the data becomes a nightmare. So one of the things that we're taking a really hard look at was to try and reuse some of the techniques that were done for classified data sanitization. If you're trying to send, say, secret data to an unclassified organization, you have certain rules on what can and can't be transmitted. So that was kind of pretty nice. We've done it definitely for the Pacific when we were doing a lot of drug interdiction projects. I don't see why we can't do it for HIPAA. The difference, though, is it has the potential for affecting a lot more people if you make a mistake. So I think the ratification or the certification of an automated sanitization system is going to have to be very, very carefully reviewed.
Okay, so we've been talking about an auto-sanitization system. The problem that I see is that the traditional ways of de-identifying, so anonymizing data, don't seem to work anymore. If you give me 12 data points, even though they're anonymized, I can probably put it back to the original owner. I mean, this was the case that came out with AOL when they did their big data dump. I mean, this was all those years ago where they released Google searches, and people realized, hey, guess what? If they Google search for their own name 3 times, it's probably that person. And it's little pieces of data like that that I don't think you can easily scrub unless you have someone manually looking at the data. I mean, Curtis, is this a pie in the sky thing to think that we could somehow de-identify billions and billions of lines of identifying information?
Well, I think that what you end up with, it's very possible to de-identify a specific database. It's very easy to identify a specific block of information. That's easy. Is it possible to de-identify every piece of information that exists about an individual? Probably not. And big data has given us the capability to go back and, as you say, put back in, fill in those gaps, put in the missing pieces. And that's going to be very difficult now for us to get away from. Big data has, in fact, changed the rules. It's, to use an old cliche, I think it's impossible to put that genie back in the bottle as much as we would like to when it's not being as useful and effective as we've seen it be. So, like so many other things, it's this balancing act. It's the, what do we want, and can we get it without the negative side effects? So far, the answer is no. And so it may be a case of just deciding at some point down the road that all of those bugs actually are features.
Scott, I want to leave this with you. Looking at the issues involved in trying to de-identify, to anonymize data, to anonymize big data, looking at the HIPAA compliance guidelines, is it safe to say that if we have the ability to re-identify patient health information, that there is no use of it in big data that could possibly be HIPAA compliant?
That's truly a hard question to answer. If you can re-identify it, and if there has not been releases signed for that data to be used for research, then no, you can't. Then no, you cannot be HIPAA compliant. Is there value to it as big data for the analysis? Yes, there is an incredibly large amount of value. So coming up with a solution to this is exceedingly important. I've been involved in a number of studies, and having the data available has been so important to those studies. So having that availability is very important. So coming up with a solution where you are not re-identifying the data and coming up with that is going to be very important. But if that can't be done, and if we cannot come up with a way to do that, then no, this is going to be a sort of a sad situation that we can't use some very valuable information that could make a major change to public health.
Cheever, let me go over to you, because this is one of those things. I think, you know, Scott is giving us sort of that sad look at it, which is, yeah, if we don't have a way to guarantee that there's no way to reintegrate the data with the person that it belongs to, and honestly, you know, speaking to the people here at Enterprise Connect, there isn't a way to guarantee that data will leak out that somehow will lead back to that particular patient. If we are cut off from all that patient health information, and let's get rid of the retailing. Let's say we're just using big data for the drug study, for Vioxx, that actually helped save patient lives. Is it enough to say, I guess we're not going to be using that sort of information, or does this warrant us saying we're going to have to look at HIPAA and see if it needs to change in the era of big data?
Yeah, so some of the statements that you've made actually we got to keep in mind, HIPAA is going to be a standard and is going to be a set of rules that is going to change over time. It is unfortunately created by the government, and we all know how effective government can be if they try to, we all know that a mouse built to government specs is an elephant, right? Well, things do change. It takes time. It takes a lot of smart people taking a good hard look at it. And, sooner or later, maybe we'll find something that does work. Yeah, there's going to be problems. Yeah, there's going to be mistakes. But I think we're smart people. We tend to try and learn from our mistakes. I know Scott and I have made some interesting mistakes over the years.
Never.
And it's been a lot of fun learning. Well, the same thing did happen in the classified arena. Before, you could not even connect two different classification levels together. Now there are rules and regulations on how to do this and how to do this effectively and fairly safely. The number of classified data spills is actually very, very small now. And that's because some very smart people have put together some very good rules and tried them out and actually talked to the people in the field. So if people that are writing HIPAA regulations are listening, my suggestion is talk to the practitioners, talk to the people in the trenches. That's why I think Scott's one of the most effective healthcare IT people I know, because he's a nurse. He's been in the trenches. He knows what it's like. He knows what patients need, and that kind of information, that kind of experience is priceless. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Brian. And I want to say that I completely agree with you. I think over time, the rules around HIPAA are going to change. Truthfully, they already have, because in the initial rendition in 1996, with the way it was written, you couldn't actually even transmit the data from a hospital to the insurance company to get reimbursed. So there has been progress, and hopefully that will continue. And I can say, at least for some of the data out there, that it is actually being used. There's a very large health maintenance organization based in the West Coast that is able to use their data because all of their patients sign and give that consent to be able to use it. So I think it's just going to be a matter of time, and it's going to be a matter of just changing the laws. And I will be very happy as a clinician and as having also worked in public health of having that information available and the changes that it can make.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for the discussion of HIPAA and big data. I'm sorry, but we've reached the end of our hour. That's right. You've used up another hour listening to the best dang enterprise podcast here in Florida under the sun. But you know what? I do want to thank all my panelists for making this possible, starting with the man to my right, Mr. Curtis Franklin. Thank you for making the trip up here, sitting down with us and sharing your knowledge.
Padre, it's always a pleasure to be with you in or out of the studio. Glad to be here and looking forward to seeing you again in just a couple of weeks out in Las Vegas at the big Interop conference.
Now, do you want to tell the folks what Enterprise Connect is doing for Interop? Because you've actually got a big lead up of podcasts, right?
We do. We've been doing radio shows on E2 Radio every Thursday with people from the conference at Interop. That continues this Thursday. Our big wrap up next Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern time. We'd love for you to listen. You'll get just a glimpse inside the conference at Interop. Then we'll have E2 Radio each and every day from the show floor at Interop.
Fantastic. And Cheeber, thank you so very much. I know you're tired from all your efforts over at the Mini Maker Fair, but do you want to tell the folks where they're going to be able to find you in a week?
They're going to be able to find me on Twyat, actually. And let's do a small spoiler. Fluke Networks is going to be on the show, and they're going to be showing off a new toy, something that all of us network geeks can actually afford. Really looking forward to it. And the pictures that the Flukettes sent, they've set up a mini studio in a conference room, so they'll be able to show off the product live on the show.
Fluke and affordable. I think you just exploded my head. Of course, I want to thank Scott McMillan. Scott, thank you for making the trip over to the studio, for sharing your years of knowledge with HIPPA. Can you tell the folks at home where they can find you, where they can find what you do, and more information about your work?
I guess if they wanted to find me, you can. I do not tweet. I am available via email, mcmillansf@gmail.com. And as for what I'm going to be doing with HIPPA, I work as a consultant in healthcare IT systems. And as of Monday, I will be out continuing working within that world. However, working on a slightly different initiative, which is ICD-10. So, but still remaining HIPAA compliant for myself.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you so very much. And I also want to thank you. That's right, the men and women who watch this show and make it possible every week. We can only do Twiat because you watch us each and every single week. So I want to do something for you. I want to give you a way to get our episodes in your device of choice each and every single week automatically. What you want to do is go to our show page at twit.tv/Twiat. There you'll find a little drop-down menu that will show you the different ways that you can get This Week in Enterprise Tech into your iPhone, your iPad, your Android phone or tablet, your PC, your Mac, your laptop, whatever it may be. We'll give you a way to get the goodness into your hotness, all on the lateness. Also, did you know that we have a YouTube page? Actually, I'm pretty sure that a lot of you don't. If you go to youtube.com/Twiat, you'll find not just all of our episodes, but also all of the individual segments that go into making This Week in Enterprise Tech. You want to watch things about stuff my IT guy says, pro tips, pro gear, it's all there waiting for you whenever you want it. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/PadreSJ. That's at PadreSJ. If you follow me there, you'll find out what I do in between episodes of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and you'll also see what I do for the other shows on the Twit TV network. Finally, did you know that we do the show live? That's right, every Monday at 2:30, rain or shine, Pacific time. Whether we're in the studio or remote, we try to get you the enterprise goodness because we know that you need it to make your decisions as that enterprise professional, that IT pro, or that geek who just wants to know how the world is connected. Finally, I want to thank everyone in the Brick House who made this show possible, for everyone who helped us through our technical hazards, and for the folks here at Enterprise Connect 2014. I'm Father Robert Ballas, just reminding you, if you want to know what's going on in the Enterprise, just keep quiet.